Hello, I'm Joshua Farnsworth and welcome to my traditional woodworking school. We're continuing our series of videos by Bill Anderson on choosing antique molding planes. And in this video, Bill's going to talk about some specialty planes, some scratch stock and hand beaters and hand routers. So I hope you enjoy this video and there's more to come.
So the fourth group of planes that we're going to work with, talk about here, actually not really planes, but tools for cutting moldings, quite useful, are these group of miscellaneous tools arrayed right here, hand beaters, scratch stock, and hand router right there. All quite useful in their own way. Let me pull out these two right here. And you can see these hand beaters. One's a modern version. This is the original Stanley number 66. Here's a Lee Nielsen version of that. These tools are quite useful. They're really in the class of tools called scratch stocks. And you see that they have a cutter right here that's attached to the body of the plane right here by a little yoke. So the cutter can have two ends. You can get two cuts, two different sort of profiles out of this, and you can loosen the yoke and take that cutter out, put a different cutter in or the same end of this one or whatever, lock it up. They've got a fence. This particular fence is curved, and I've got a straight fence on this one. So you can use these on curved work or on straight work. The really nice thing about hand beaters is that as you're scratching the profile into the stock, if the grain reverses on you, you can move the fence to the other side. I'll adjust this fence so it's cutting a bead right here. So you can see that fence has obscured part of the profile, so I'm just cutting a bead on the edge of the stock. The grain reverses on me. Slide the fence over to the other side, turn the hand beater around, and go in the other direction with the grain. So a really nice feature of these tools here, and they're so useful that they're being made again by a major manufacturer. Really almost nothing can go wrong with these. They're metal planes. You want to make sure all the parts are there. Ideally, the one that you buy would have both a straight fence and a curved fence. The thumb screw here and the yoke. The cutters, here's a selection of them right here. The cutters can be made of anything that you can get your hands on. A piece of metal, reasonable thickness, certain width. You could figure that out from the width of the yoke there. And you can file any sort of profile on here you want and use that to make a profile. Here, I'll hold them up like this, so maybe a little more obvious. So I have some reeds here, a bead, so on and so forth. So quite useful. Here's three actual scratch stocks. Here's a sort of quick and dirty scratch stock. You see it's a block of wood with a slice cut into it right there. And the cutter tapped in here, it sits in here by pressure. This particular cutter also is cutting a bead. So very useful for running that alongside. And because you can tilt this forward or backwards, you can cut with the grain or against the grain with this sort of tool here. Very useful. On the other side, on a much smaller scale, I've got a small little cutter here that cuts a small groove, the kind of groove that you'd use to insert some banding into the edge of a Federal style leg, for example. So very quick and dirty tool. You can shape any sort of cutter you want. Quite useful. Here's a little bit more elaborate cutter, more in the style that you often see published in magazine articles, an L-shaped piece of wood with a slot down the center, a couple of nuts and bolts here to clamp in and hold a cutter. And this particular cutter this particular one is shaped to cut a very, very small OG profile. I don't know if you can see that or not. This is the fence. This is the depth stop. You just scratch through the work, and as I said before, you can tilt it this way to go with the grain or tilt it that way to push away. Just depends on how the grain goes. I often make these things and dedicate them to a particular cutter, and when I'm done with this, I just leave this and make a whole new one for another piece of scratch stock. Quite useful to have those laying around. This last scratch stock here is a tool that I use in a frame to clean up the profiles of molding planes. And we're going to talk about this in more detail later on when I talk about rehabbing molding planes. But this will allow you to make a cutter to match a profile on a plane. You can set it in here and you can adjust this. It runs on a frame. This is the reference right here, so you can scratch a profile into a stock that's perfectly parallel to an edge, perfectly flat, because this rests on both sides of the frame here. So quite useful, and you'll see more of this later on. This particular profile is a little OG, which I use to clean up OG planes that are made by students in my molding plane class. The last tool we have is this sort of plane, and it's quite an odd looking plane made by a company called Preston in England. I don't think anybody else made these. It's actually called a hand router, and you notice it's got two profiles, and the profiles are the mirror images of each other. And it's got a very short bed. You can see how long the bed is. So it's really like a plane with a very, very short bed. Those two profiles mean that this is ideally suited for cutting curves, cutting profiles on curved work, windows, for example, circular windows, where as you go a quarter way around the circle, you're with the grain. Next quarter, you're going to be against the grain. So you just turn the beater around, hand router around, and continue to go with the grain another quarter. And then on the third quarter, this way, the fourth quarter with the other profile that way. So you can work your way around a complete circle. They came in a variety of profiles, often lamb's tongues, quarter rounds, ovalos, like that. So quite an unusual tool. Really nothing can go wrong with these. They're all made out of steel or iron. There may be a hairline crack if these have been dropped, so that's something to look for. You want to make sure the nuts are there, the washers are there, that the irons match each other, so on and so forth. I bought these many, many years ago. They were very, very cheap. Now they're very, very expensive. So you very seldom see them on the American market, sometimes on eBay from England.
If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking, come take a class at our school in Earlysville, Virginia. You can also visit our website at WoodAndShop.com, where you'll find a bunch of free woodworking lessons, workshop tours, and our very popular tool buying guides. And make sure you subscribe to our free newsletter to get our latest articles and videos. Enjoy!